Good morning, Shine Campus, and welcome to our coffee hangout. Hope everybody's doing well. So, today we're going to talk about a topic that might cause us to go a little bit longer than what we normally go: how to get your wife to be more intimate. Ladies, I know that you might think this is not for you, but this is for you too. So, you can keep watching it, and you might see some things in here that are kind of interesting, and hopefully, we can come together and get the things done in our marriages that we want to get done. So, how to get your wife to be more intimate? The first thing that I want to recognize is just the idea that once we get to this point of asking this question, things are probably a little bit more challenging than we want them to be. Um, we there's a loss feeling I think that comes on because you feel like you can't do anything right. There's no way to get past the wall that's going on. Um, and I've seen in some circumstances, like there's other situations that have already started to happen, like somebody else has entered into the relationship, whether it's a friend or a special kind of friend. That probably wouldn't even be fair to say a special kind of friend because it usually ends up in infidelity, those kinds of things. And so I know that those harsh situations can happen, and it's probably a different conversation to get to that far of things. But if you're in a place where you just know that, like, man, I'm lost. I don't know how to. I've been trying to do all the things. I just don't know how to get my wife to be different. And your wife might even be at a point where she feels like, man, I just don't do that, right? Like I'm not going to be intimate. That's not what's happening. So how do we get all of that to change? There's the first part of what I'm going to describe to you, which is like the overall idea of how things start changing in your relationship, and then I'm going to give you some other pieces that are going to help you specifically with intimacy. All right. So the first thing that you need to be able to know about getting things to turn in your relationship is that we only fight about three things. So if there's a battle for something like intimacy, then there is something going on inside of one of us. So it doesn't have to be your wife. Just because she's not doing what you want her to do doesn't mean that it's her. But there's a battle that goes on inside of us. One is for power control. Another one is for significance, like we want to feel important. And then the other thing is the idea of abandonment. We don't want to be abandoned. Okay, so those three things we constantly battle about. Now, imagine if you're not getting the things that you want inside of your relationship. You don't even have to imagine, you're there, right? You're not getting the things that you want in your relationship. That's three areas that we just talked about right there. One is there's abandonment there. Two is there's a lack of sense of significance or feeling important. And three is you feel out of control. So you're battling all of those things. What happens when we battle all of those things? Well, when we battle all of those things, we start getting afraid. Our body starts kicking into a fight or flight mode, anxious, worried. We try to force how do we say it? Like, you can't force a round peg into a square hole or a square peg into a round hole. Like, we try to really put scenarios or make scenarios happen that aren't supposed to be happening. And so, as that's going on, your anxiousness or your worrying or your fear that things won't go your way starts to kick up that same kind of scenario for your wife. Now, what's interesting is we all handle our fears or our worries differently. So, like, for instance, your fear or worry might be handled in a way that you go silent and quiet and um, and maybe stonewall. That might be your way, but your wife's way of handling the same kind of anxiousness and worry is maybe to talk to friends a lot and cry and or be in a space of overwhelm. Like all those things are possibilities now, and it could flip, um, where maybe you're the person who is more abundant with the emotions, and your wife is less displaying of the emotions. That can be the scenario. It doesn't matter how it's happening. What we need to understand is that it happens differently, right? So what we have so far is you have this idea that, okay, my I've created a scenario, or there is a scenario in my relationship where I don't have power control, I don't have a sense of connectedness, I don't have a sense of I'm feeling important in this relationship. And so as that's happening, my anxiousness that comes out of that scenario starts creating more anxiousness in my relationship, which in turn causes my relationship to actually move apart because both of us are in a mode of, I need to protect myself. And that's not a conscious thing, by the way. None of this is conscious. And so there's no need for you to battle like what it is. That important piece is that it is happening. Okay. All right. So if that's happening, we've created that scenario all on our own, which is a pretty cool opportunity. Okay. So people hate whenever I talk about it like this because one of the things that we want to do, and this is probably the first scenario that I'm going to give you specifically, is you really have to let go of the idea that you have control with whether your wife is intimate towards you or not. You have to let go of trying to control that scenario, because what's happening is that you're trying to control something that you don't have control over, because your wife's current actions are not just based on what's going on right now. They've been based on a lot of things that have happened in her life, right? And so if you try to control what happens in this moment, you're going to get frustrated and you're going to frustrate her, and it's going to just pull you apart. So you need to stop trying to control that, let go of that concept, and go to the one area that you actually have control over. What is the one area that you have control over? Well, it's you, it's what you're doing. And so what you're doing is equally as important. Does it result in intimacy today? No. But does it result in intimacy long term? Yes. Why? Because if you're able to focus, and I'm going to tell you how to focus in a second, but if you're able to focus on the right things, then you drop that anxious building that you were creating earlier and replace it with a secure feeling of faith and confidence and ambition, right? And so, how do I do that? Well, I do that by creating a different kind of environment in my home. And I'll tell you some things that cause you to go from being um, in a place of anxiousness and worry that things aren't going your way to a place of security and excitement and ambition, right? So here's what it is. The first thing is, if you're not doing things in your life that you should be doing. So if you're not accomplishing at a rate that you like, if you're utilizing addiction scenarios, it doesn't matter what kind of addiction scenarios, all of those things will reduce your sense of control about how life works for you. Why is that? Well, because you're giving up your control to other things or other shortcuts. And when you do that, your mind and body start knowing, your spirit knows, like, hey, you're not in control, your body's in control. And if you don't have control, then you need to try to get it somewhere else, right? And so it keeps looking for other areas to um, provide control. The second thing is how you contribute to um, the people around you and the way that you're doing service around you. If you can change that and up that and stay focused on being able to do that, the way that you focus on being able to do that is you start building on the inside, really growing you and learning the different things that it means to be on the inside for you to be able to produce more for people on the outside. Okay. And so we talk a lot about this in our marriage communication masterclass. The goal here is for you to be able to figure out, how do I grow me as much as possible? Okay. And so we're consumed now with a couple of things. One is we're consumed with doing away with our addictive scenarios. Two is we're consumed with being better um, at growing ourselves, learning more about ourselves, learning more how to do the things that we need to do. And then the third thing is deal with, and this probably will help you with number one and two, but deal with your trauma scenarios. Deal with all the situations that have um, caused different hardships or that are leading to different scenarios in your life to this day, right? And so if you can figure out, okay, what are my situations? And a lot of times we don't call our scenarios in life traumas. What we do is we can look at what our hardships are now, and then we can work backwards from there and point to a time. So for instance, if your wife not being intimate with you is really frustrating you, okay, it comes from that scenario, but what else is it hooked onto? Right? Like what else is this saying about you, and what's that feeling? And the first look, and I know when we're not willing to do our work, the first thing is it's just my wife. Like if she would change, then I will be all right. And I'm telling you that if you were to change, you're going to be all right. And the change that you have to make is being willing to look at what the hook is that makes you feel less than, or what the view is that you have that makes it so that your wife's inability to do intimacy creates the issue. All right. So as you look at that, those processes help you to do um, to get to those first two scenarios of really being able to work on yourself and change around what's the feeling. Okay, so why are we doing all that? So if we go back and rewind, the anxiousness that you get when you have a certain circumstance raises the anxiousness that your wife gets. And your wife getting anxiousness and you getting anxiousness inside of the relationship, or even hesitation, maybe we won't call it anxiousness, but the hesitation to be closer to each other is because there's not a security sense inside of the relationship. There's not a connected sense inside of the relationship. There's not a sense that we're important to each other. And so if we're not having that in the relationship, where does it come from? Well, it comes from us being more in our own lives. As men, it's up to us to be able to be more in our lives so that we can um, create an environment that feels secure and connected and allows our wife to be put on a pedestal and be served. So, if we're willing to change this around, if you're willing to look at um, how you're doing things in your life, you take off the pressure to try to be intimate, and you go to work on who you're being, and what it is that you're doing in your life. I promise you, this will change the intimacy in your relationship. And you can come back and leave it in the comments and let me know, like, Thomas, this was absolutely a gold mine. Thank you for helping me, right? Because I know it changes your life. And it's not a matter of you trying to count the costs or trying to say, like, oh, now we'll be able to have sex um, and things will be so much better. It's not that. You're really going to have to let go of that part and go to work on who you are and see what the outcome is going to be inside of your relationship. If you need help going to work, start out with our marriage communication masterclass. The link for that is below, but it's also in my bio. If you're not ready to jump in there, we also have the a small snippet of my masterclass, which is the 7 mistakes that cause marriages to be disconnected, resentful, and end in divorce. I want to be able to help you guys and change the way your relationship is going, and ultimately change the way your life is going. All right. We'll talk to you guys soon. See you in our next series. We're actually continuing a series this week. Jump in our playlist and you'll be able to find our next series. We'll talk to you soon.